As my friend and colleague Mark Simone, radio host, put it, tomorrow's impeachment day. The Democrats impeach Trump every February. It's now become an annual event, kind of like the Golden Globes. Remember last February when they missed the pandemic started because they were focused on impeachment? Too bad there's not a lot of let's work for the American people day. Here with reaction, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. By the way, Professor, be warned, his nickname is Firebrand. It's a best-selling book. Like you, he's entering a new arena in his life. It's all happening. Now, you're a Democrat, Professor, and I don't think you've ever been asked this question. You heard Maxine Waters. You've heard me play Chuck Schumer on the steps of the Supreme Court. I read Kamala Harris's statements. I played it many times. If you apply that standard they're using to define insurrection against Donald Trump, does it or does it not apply to them?
I don't think it should apply to any of them. I think the First Amendment protects all of that speech, just the way it protected Clarence Brandenburg when he got up wearing Klan outfits with hoods and crosses and guns, saying, I want to take revengeance against the Senate, and I want to send all the Jews back to Israel and all the blacks back to Africa. The Supreme Court unanimously upheld that decision. President Trump didn't incite people to come to the Capitol. He invited the people, not incite, invite. He said, come peacefully and patriotically protest. But you wouldn't know that if you read 144 constitutional scholars issued a letter the other day threatening Donald Trump's lawyers, saying if you dare to even raise a First Amendment argument, I'll read it to you, any First Amendment defense raised by President Trump's attorneys would be legally frivolous. Now, that's a magic word, legally frivolous. It means unethical, unprofessional. You can be disciplined and disbarred. So here you have 144 scholars telling Trump's lawyers that the American people are not entitled to hear an argument based on the First Amendment. Well, I'm here to tell these lawyers, I taught legal ethics for 25 years at Harvard. I am a constitutional lawyer for 55 years. Make that argument. If you don't make it, it's unethical, because you have an obligation to your client and to the American people to present this First Amendment argument. Ignore these 144 scholars. They are all result-oriented. They want to see Trump impeached, and they're willing to stretch, tug, destroy, and limit the Constitution. It is a shame
I give you
that
credit.
144 scholars would attach their name to that.
Professor, I give you credit for pure intellectual honesty and consistency. But Matt Gaetz and the professor said it's all protected speech. I agree with the professor. The president did say many of you will peacefully, patriotically march to the Capitol so your voices can be heard. I tend to doubt with the little edited montages that Chucky and company are going to put forward tomorrow, and Raskin, who himself challenged the election in 2016, will ever bring up. But the bottom line is this is who they are. They can't help themselves anymore. We've lived it now the last 5 years.
This is impeachment by reflex. It is impeachment in lieu of an actual agenda for the American people. Regular Americans watching this charade will wonder, what's in it for them? Now, I didn't teach legal ethics like Professor Dershowitz, but I at least passed it, and I could tell you that there is an obligation on the part of the president's attorneys to make these First Amendment arguments and to vindicate the claims the president was making as someone who cares deeply about election integrity. The president's lawyers will do their job if they can show that the Democrats are trying to establish a standard of conduct that they themselves cannot live by. They're the quotes that you showed in the monologue, but also remember Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who said as long as there's unrest in our lives, there'll be unrest in the streets, and yet there was no action taken against her. I think that's far more inciting of potential violence than when the president was asking people to be peaceful and patriotic. But ultimately here you see a dangerous expansion of the impeachment tool. In Ukraine, they used impeachment because they had a policy disagreement with the president about the extent to which we ought to hold back that aid in exchange for anti-corruption efforts. Now they're literally using it to try to discipline speech that they find uncomfortable and they don't like. That is a very dangerous precedent for the country.
It's
All right, Congressman.
Free speech for me, but not for thee. Free speech for me, but not for thee. And that cannot ever be allowed to prevail, because if you give free speech for me and not for thee, ultimately, nobody gets free speech. So we must protect free speech for everyone.
Well said, Alan Dershowitz. And that means free speech to call me on social media any name you want. Just don't attack Matt Gaetz. It's unfair. All right. Thank you both. Congressman Gaetz and Alan Dershowitz.
This is Congressman Matt Gaetz. If you liked that video, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and join us on our daily podcast, Hot Takes with Matt Gaetz, on your favorite podcast listening platform.